Andy Johnson, Minnesota State University. I am looking, you are listening, to whole language, 8 characteristics of whole language. Note that whole language is not a specific methodology. Whole language is a theory and an approach to literacy instruction. And there is a vast research base to support holistic or progressive approaches to teaching literacy, much more so than this purely skills-based approach that some people, usually people outside of literacy, try to advocate. 8 characteristics. Number 1, creating meaning is at the heart of the reading process and writing process, not barking at print. The goal is to create meaning, also not to remember what someone else has written. Readers, the brain uses 3 cuing systems. A cuing system is something that tells the brain what that word might be. So we recognize these 3 cuing systems and we create instruction that utilizes this. First of all, the graphic, the printed letters, the arrangement of letters. Now, people that use a purely skills-based approach says, oh, the brain only uses that. Well, that is 1/3 of the answer. Wouldn't you rather have the whole answer than 1/3 of the answer? Syntax, what makes sense within the sentence. The structure of the language and the structure of the story, if we want to get into story grammar as well. And semantics, what makes sense within the context of the sentence or the story. Now, a purely skills-based approach teaches one way to recognize unknown words as you're reading them. Holistic approaches, progressive approaches, teaches children 7. Now, I know 7 is more than 1. Having 7 strategies is better than 1 strategy. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. We, progressive teachers, teach children how to recognize words using context clues, one way, using morphemic analysis, teaching them to look at prefixes, suffixes, and root words. Word analysis or word families or phonograms, looking at parts of the words that we recognize. The ab family, the ip family, the tr beginning sounds, etc., etc. Word families. Ask a friend. Skip the words. We teach them to recognize sight words and phonics, putting letter sounds to each letter in the word. However, phonics, an important strategy. It must be taught explicitly. Whole language teachers believe that. With all our heart, we believe it. But it's the least efficient because it takes up the most thinking space in short-term money and memory. And it can make it more difficult to create meaning. Expert readers use very minimal letter cues. When you see the word phonics, your brain isn't processing every letter. You're processing maybe the first 2 letters and the last ones, and you're using the context of this whole reading thing to quickly recognize phonics. Your brain is not going, all right? Let me explain that further. Reading's an interactive process. We use what's in the brain to help us understand what is on the page to create meaning. Purely skills-based approach says reading is a bottom-up. We focus just on letter cues, and that goes into the brain. Interactive. Now, this is based on a cognitive model of reading. This is the basic information processing model found in cognitive psychology. It says we perceive data, stimulus in sensory perception. We can hold bits of this for about 1 second. From there, information goes into short-term memory. We can hold 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information there for about 15 seconds. From there, it goes into long-term memory. We can hold unlimited amounts of knowledge there for an unlimited amount of time. It's not a matter of store, it's a matter of retrieval. The interactive process says, well, we use what's in our head to help us understand what we see on the page. I can read a lot about reading quickly and easily because my head is full of reading stuff. And other stuff, you'll probably say. When I tried to read about financial analysis and that stuff, not so much here. about financial analysis, it makes reading much more difficult. We use what's in the head to help us understand. So as I'm reading stuff about financial analysis, it comes to short-term memory, I use what's in here. So you see the two-way flow of information, bottom up and top down. Now here's the thing about a purely phonics-based approach. I can hold 7 plus or minus bits of information here. Now I could hold 7 letters, 7 words, 7 ideas. If I can only hold 7 letters, that does not make a very efficient system for creating meaning with print. I'm going letter by letter and I can hold fewer ideas. It makes learning to read more difficult. Short-term memory does not have a large capacity. That's one of many reasons why, yes, we teach phonics and to sound out words, but it's the least efficient because it takes up more space in short-term memory. Whole language people, we believe in authentic literacy tasks. Authentic means just like we do in the real world. I read for enjoyment, and I read to get information. To the greatest extent possible, we want our children to be engaged in these real tasks, and I write to express ideas. Versus artificial tasks, where you're reading something like Dan the man sat on a fan. Well, that's artificial writing that doesn't resemble real talking. Or where they write a report about the Bolivian export. That's not writing to share your ideas, that's writing to share someone else's ideas. So authentic, reading real books for real purposes that look like real world kinds of things, and writing to share ideas. Total reinforcement. We whole language progressives, value statement noted, believe that all language forms reinforce each other. Therefore, reading reinforces writing, writing reinforces reading, speaking and listening all work together to create this literacy thing. So we cannot simply have reading instruction, we call it literacy. If you're working on remediation or any kind of instruction, you need to have writing with reading. They reinforce each other. If you have trouble, a child is having trouble with reading, one of the first things you need to do is not the first thing, but you need to have them writing as well as reading. Total reinforcement, you cannot separate. Holistic, whole. You cannot pull parts away from the whole. And the last idea is that reading, literacy, writing is a continually developing skill, meaning that you get better with practice. I'm better this year than last year because I've had more reading practice. Just like you become a better batter by practice, a better pianist by practice, you need practice reading. Instead of reading class, we should call it reading practice. Here ends the gospel. Part 2, whole language.